We'll tick down the final 4 seconds.
It's been all right, O'Brien.
Port Adelaide threw their best punch. An undermanned and inexperienced side, but in the end, they were no match for these rampaging Dockers. They notch up this.
Alrighty, good evening, and welcome to the CREEDCAST. It is Tuesday, 21st of July, which means this is your review show time of the week, and we are here to review what was a far more fascinating and far more intriguing, far more exciting match in many aspects on Saturday, early Saturday afternoon against the Fremantle Dockers in round 19. A match that had a 47-point line on sports bets, but one that Port Adelaide competed in far, far heavier than anyone expected and had Freo sweating a fair bit at halftime. But ultimately, Fremantle were too good on the day and put the foot down a little bit in the second half and made it relatively comfortable for themselves in the end. But a scoreline that is not at all it makes Port Adelaide still look pretty good on the day. It was 11-9-75 for your Port Adelaide Footy Club to Fremantle's 15-13-103, a 28-point win to Fremantle, but one that certainly left us feeling a lot of pride in the outcome of the day and how Port Adelaide fought, particularly with the context of the injury crisis that we are currently under, one that has only gotten worse, as we've found out in recent hours going into recording tonight, which we'll touch on later on. But good evening, Jamie. You and I spent the first half together on the day, and it was a hell of a first half. Obviously, tampered a little bit with the second half, but ultimately we come out of the day feeling pretty good about what Port Adelaide did on the day, fighting against the odds, against the ladder leaders and the injury crisis, but showing us that the direction the Josh Carr ethos and structure has us under is a pretty good place to be for this team.
Hello, Dave, and everyone else tuning in, wherever you may be tuning in from. Yeah, I think that what we saw would fill a lot of people with a bit of pride. Our feedback, like we discussed over the aftermath, over the days after Saturday afternoon's game, the socials are a pretty good vibe some of the time, maybe selective feedback or whatnot. But one thing that stood out to us was just the lack of angst. Everyone, maybe it's a bit of Stockholm syndrome or something similar. We're just like, this is fine, which it is. And look, we went into Saturday's game with such low expectations, but what we did get was new toys, and we love new toys to play with. It was a bit of a new toys game. You know, you could forgive us for getting a bit sick of Zach Butters and, you know, Jason Horne-Francis having two of the best fucking years that you could ask for. But we didn't have them, so we had to turn our attention to some new boys, some old boys, one in particular turning back the clock a little bit, and just some peripheral players plying their trade in different roles, or maybe increased roles on what we had become used to, which was a little bit fulfilling on the day. Like you said, Fremantle put the foot down, and while we were all buoyed by a spirited first half, we couldn't overcome what was a huge several haymakers quickly in the third quarter that kind of took the game right away from us in the flash that it was. But ultimately, when you have that many first choice players out, you can't expect a lot. And other people have discussed, you know, betting lines and estimations of what the margin could be. And funnily enough, Weirlo predicted the margin. Actually, that's just dawned on me, which we touched on in our alternate timeline preview. So there you go. For anyone playing at home, 28 points. And I know personally, I said that I'd be pretty content with that. knowing that the betting line was 47.5 points. There was a lot of 10-goal chat. So while it was a bit of a flip side to the St Kilda game, we had a good first half and a pretty poor second half, although we fought the game out pretty well in the fourth quarter. You take everything into consideration and you accept the nuance of things. They are the ladder leaders for a reason, one of the most well-balanced and healthy sides. Just goes to show what health can do for you. But this is a Port Adelaide show, and I do want to focus on the fact that we came to play, and Josh Carr seems to know how to pull some strings in some of these younger players and some of these role players, some of these list cloggers, some of these draft busts, if you will, to get them going. And that's all you can really ask for as a fan of a football team, whoever it may be, whatever you're striving to do, whatever your outcome is within a season, whether you're the teams that are striving for premiership success or if you're wanting a taste of finals because you haven't been there in a while, if you're resetting, if you're rebuilding, God forbid. All you want to see is your team having a genuine crack. As the creed says in our regard, put it all out there, and if you lose, you know that you've done everything you can. And I think that's what we're seeing with this Port Adelaide side. Although the wins aren't coming, they're at least giving it a red hot go.
Yeah. Yeah, and that you did touch on the general sentiment from the socials. There was, I think, there was one particular comment that said, if that went the other way, and that said if the team had followed the creed, then they would have won. And I kind of bit back and said, well, if you had any understanding what the creed was, then you'd understand that actually what we're talking about here is a team actually did leave it all out in the field and left everything out there. And the creed says that if you exert all human endeavor towards your goal and ultimately still do not reach it, if you are content in the fact that you have exerted all of that human effort, then you can still stand tall. And that is part of the Port Adelaide philosophy, is that yes, you're not going to win every game, but if you can go out there and put it all out there, and that's what this team did on the day. And that's ultimately why I've just had this thought in my head since the day, since you and I were standing on, obviously we spent the first half on the hill, and if you let me philosophize for a minute or two, we watched that, well, we heard that halftime siren go, and in a moment that, we've seen these at different times when Port Adelaide have played, and the crowd reacts with, raucous approval of what they've seen on the field, but it often can happen in games of finals like at a caliber or games that are meaning something towards the back end of a season. This was a 15th place side putting out an effort in the first half against the ladder leaders, and what we saw was a crowd rise, the 28,000 strong crowd rise with raucous applause of approval of an effort that most were, everyone would have gone into the ground hoping we'd see it, but you weren't expecting it. And when you see, and I just thought that was such a beautiful moment of, there's no scripting of these things. It just happens because Port Adelaide fans are approving of what they've seen. And it was a moment that made me think of, the inside of our Guernseys, and indeed every sporting institution around the world ultimately exists to win premierships, exists to win titles. Whatever sporting endeavor you are involved in as a professional sporting organization, your ultimate goal is to win the title of whatever competition you play in. And there are some fans out there that, go by the idea, they can sometimes be a little bit, narrow-minded and go by the idea that nothing matters unless we're winning premierships and title. No in games individual moments within a season matter, because all that matters is winning premierships and titles, and we don't care what's going on in between that. But I subscribe to the idea, the notion that, and you and I have talked about this a bit over the years, that the journey, and indeed us doing this podcast, is all about, we want to do this and then look back when we do win a premiership eventually, again, that we've gone through this journey of the ups and downs. And it's all about, the destination is only as fulfilling as the journey you've been on. And we're in a week where a movie called The Odyssey has come out, and that is indeed a movie that is ultimately about destination and a climax to a movie and a poem and whatever your proclivities are in relations to that story. But the journey that Odysseus goes on, the Odyssey, then the etymology of that word is Odysseus. That is a story about a journey, and we're on a journey in the early parts of a journey with Josh Carr, and whatever the Josh Carr journey will end at some point. That is the nature of these things. It will end at some point, and we all hope that it ends with multiple premierships and an era of success that is unparalleled in the history of Port Adelaide. It would be wonderful to have that with Josh Carr whenever that journey ends. We're in the early parts of that journey, and going back to the origin of this point that I was making is that I will think about that moment when the crowd stood applauding and cheering as one in unison, a 28,000 strong Port Adelaide contingent at Adelaide Oval in July of 2026, supporting their 15th place side that has no ambitions for premiership glory this year and realistically next year, at least. They were standing and applauding and recognizing a moment early in the journey. And it made me just think about the fact that I subscribe to the fact that the journey is so much a part about it. Yes, the premiership success, the 2004 DVD is special to me in the isolation of the DVD and the moments that happen in that grand final. But what's special to me about the memories of that grand final DVD is all the journey the memories that I had leading up to that, the heartbreak of 2002 as a 14-year-old, the heartbreak again in 2003 as a 15-year-old, and finally getting there and supporting that premiership as a 16-year-old. The journey to get there is what makes that 2004 DVD so special. And whenever we get to the next point of glory, a moment as simple as a 28,000 strong crowd standing in unison, applauding and appreciating these list cloggers and whatever other terms you want to have, Mitch Zadow fucking turning into prime Robbie Gray, all these things that were going on Saturday that kind of defied belief in that first half in particular. That part of the journey will be special to me. Whatever is to come, it's again just a part of the journey of being a Port Adelaide fan, and it's why I will always encourage people to listen to this podcast. I'm sure if you're a long-time listener and a regular listener, you probably subscribe to some of our ideas of thinking, but I just wanted to stress that that's just a little moment that a lot may not remember, but it's one that I remember and in my journey as a Port Adelaide fan, and hopefully as we head to premiership glory once again, it'll be one of those little moments that'll be special to me. And it was special to me on the day. Very special. It was a beautiful day as well. As just everything kind of matched up in that moment, but it was a special moment. I think that's kind of how I want to start this review, is just by recognizing that there was just a little bit of something in the air about the day, regardless of what the result was.
What's a DVD? No, very well said, of course. Yeah, that was sensational because I obviously totally agree with you. I, as a sport fan, or just a fan of life and progression, a growth mindset. If you do have a growth mindset, it's just the simplicity of understanding that progress isn't linear, and it is the journey that you have to enjoy, because why the fuck else would you do what you do if you weren't or can't enjoy the journey that you're on in the meantime? Everyone has goals, whatever they may be, but there's a lot that goes into reaching those goals that you need to take enjoyment from. And yeah, and for me as well, it is in the times where we didn't overcome adversity, but we're faced with adversity, and it's how you react in those times, or how you show up in those times, that kind of stick out in your mind. Like you said, and for me, some of my most cherished wins, obviously there's the big ones, and the big ones when we were doing quite well as a football club, but there's definitely others where that stick out in my mind and I hold close to my heart. are the ones where we're down and out, or where we're going through a rough period of time, and we do overcome that adversity. I mean, the showdown recently is a perfect example of that. Us as Port Adelaide fans will remember that game as a whole for forever. And it'll probably be bumped up the ladder in terms of favourite moments for people, outside of the obvious ones and finals excluded and things like that. But yeah, absolutely. It was just a good opportunity to kind of let your hair down with no expectations. It was a perfect day, like you said. Tough time for families to come out and people involved with local sport. But 28,000 people rocked up. And like I've said before, and like we've discussed before, it doesn't matter how many fucking people are there. They're going to make noise as if it's a full house anyway, as we heard in the third quarter when things weren't quite going in our favour, both from a competitive point of view, but perhaps we felt hard done by at stages. But the best part about that first half in particular was that there was no expectations. We were playing well, but there was also the kind of humour of everything that was kind of unfolding, like Dante Visentini just pulling 2 goals out of his ass, and some of the calls going our way, and actually living the reality that we were playing good football and we were making it count on the scoreboard. Yes, things can quickly turn, and then you get that white line fever as a spectator after halftime. But just being able to enjoy a day of football, because there was no real repercussions. Like, however the game went, there's no repercussions. Like, we can really do no wrong, except because so many people were going to be content with a blowout because of how well we have played in the journey up to Saturday's game. We'd only conceded 100 points once. We haven't been blown out. We've played decent football by and large for the whole season, without the wins, of course. So it was a rare occasion. I did say to you, though, I think it was pre-game, that the perfect weather and the lack of attendance did kind of give me Footy Park circa 2008 to 2012 vibes.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, my dad, myself, my brother, my littlest brother was too young back in that time period. But we went. We showed up every single fucking time because we love the football club. But it's just that drive down what was the drive down Port River Expressway from where we lived in Salisbury. It was the hope that Port would put in a good effort. Maybe we could pull off something miraculous. But at the end of the day, it was the hope that you have as a sport fan to see something good and to see your team show up. And it's kind of full circle with that comment. It's kind of where I started. That's what we got. They showed up. They couldn't overcome the mountain, but we still finished the game, and we enjoyed the journey that we're in, but we enjoyed the journey of that game as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The journey of the game was one in which it kind of ends with a result that's, well, as Willow Rating said, was exactly on point. But the journey that got us to that point was, something that filled us with a lot more hope than we were expecting going in, and that's we got to see a team that, again, the context of this game with the injury crisis and everything that was going on with this team at the moment, to watch a midfield that is got Miles Bergman as the second most CBAs outside of Jordan Sweet, and then you've got a mixture of Ollie Wines and Willem Drew and Jace Burgoyne and Joe Richards in there against the ladder leading Fremantle Dockers. If you'd gone into that game, you would have been like, well, that team's not winning center clearance 18-9. Like, you're just not seeing that. You're not expecting that. And yes, stoppage is a little bit of a different story. And that's maybe where some of that elite class of the Zach Butters and Jason Orr-Francis being a little bit more available to certain percentages of stoppages might have helped. But, by and large, we see a team that, devoid of a lot of its star power, actually challenge Fremantle across all three lines at different times in the game, and ultimately just the fact that they had a fit team with a trio of tall forwards that have scored 100 goals, over 100 goals between them this year. Ultimately that class is going to show, and it did, but it didn't show by a whole lot, and it just goes to show that I think structure and ethos, and I think a kind of a main point I want to make and see how you feel about it before we get into the lines is just that what it's really shown me in watching the replay and just thinking about it across the past couple of days is the message must be getting through loud and clear at this point as to what Josh Carr wants, because he's able to throw, Bailyn O'Brien comes in for his debut, and you've got guys coming in that have played 3-4 games. Bamet's played every game since he debuted, but still very, very young in his football life. Obviously, a big shake-up to the midfield group in what was missing, and Mitch Georgiades goes out for the first game of the year, so it's a big change to the forward structure. All three lines had changes in structure. Maybe the defensive line is probably the one that had the least, but it still had a debutant coming into it. For me, it really shows that the message must be really, really, whether it's simple, whatever the message is, whatever the players are hearing what Josh Carr is putting down.
Yeah, and I do want to extend on that by also crediting the assistant coaches who have a big part to play, more so than ever these days, because, I totally agree with what you're saying, because the head coach has to kind of set the philosophy or ethos, like the two words that you've used, in regards to how the team is going to play. But it's also the assistant coaches that spend a lot of time with these players. And just from a layman point of view, outside of learning a defensive zone and the structure in that regard, because I think that's probably the be-all and end-all for this season, in this phase of our transition as a football club. But it seems to me that players are playing or given a license to play with a bit of instinct when the ball's flipped over. Because you mentioned the likes of Bamet, Zado, from an offensive point of view. Obviously, you need a certain level of toughness to be picked in this team, or play with a certain amount of grit. But we see, those two in particular, just looking ultimately comfortable on an AFL field, in an AFL match, with under 5 games of experience, or 10 games combined perhaps of experience, and that's most pleasing. And I think it might have been Mark Rasciuto in commentary highlighted the fact that, while we are in an injury crisis, what this can do for young players and fast-tracking their development will only be felt in the years to come. But that's the effect that regular games can have. And that's what I'm looking for. I'm obviously not expecting a Xavier Bamet or a Bailyn O'Brien to win us a game of football. But what we do want to see as fans is the attributes, the effort, and help us manifest in our mind, or extrapolate in our mind, what that might look like in 50 games time, and how that can contribute to where we want to go when we're ready as a football club. But I totally agree. Like, the message must be getting through, because we've had to cycle through a lot of these players this year, and Josh Carr is getting a very good look at our list. Like, it's not only going to hold the young players in good stead, it's going to hold him in good stead. Obviously, we have a list manager to also discuss these things with. But in terms of who Josh Carr will want to represent the football club moving forward, he's getting a very good look at it. And that's, I think I mentioned it in my snippet in the preview. That's essentially what I wanted to see out of this game is like who's gonna show us a bit more than what they've already shown for the people who have played regular games, such as a Jace Burgoyne, who definitely showed a bit more. Who's going to take steps forward? I'd say Mitch Zato definitely took steps forward in his short career. These are the things that I wanted to get out of the game. And again, another facet of the pride is that not only did the team play well as a unit, we saw players take steps forward in a loss. So I can't ask for much more than that.
Yeah, agreed. It's something that just kind of came to mind as you were talking as well, and you're kind of talking about Josh Carr. And again, one more thing before we get to the lines, it's just like you're talking about fast tracking and development of the kids and the players that we're throwing in there. The fast tracking of development of Josh Carr in his first year, obviously he's a head coach already. So obviously his development has gotten to a point that he's gotten the head coaching job, but his experience that he's gaining from, I'm sure he'd rather not have to deal with what is the most games of experience lost to injury out of the entire competition this year. But what this is forcing him into is a development of his coaching skills and his acumen and his selection. And again, to your point, alongside all the line coaches as well, they're all having to work together and dealing with this. But the development for all of those, Josh Carr as head coach, and then your Reeves and your Jews and et cetera, that are having to deal with this, and their game plan last week to go into the week and go, okay, Zach Butters is injured, Horn Francis is suspended, Mitch Georgiades has a concussion. What the fuck do we do this week? And they sat down, got to work, and put together a team that went out and competed. And in the last quarter, if a few things had gone, right, we could have won the game if we kicked a couple of, there was that little bit of couple of moments where we went, oh, we kicked a goal. Okay, let's see. It's just, it never was really realistic. But the fact is, they had us in that position. And I think that's there's a development aspect to what Josh Carr's had to deal with this year, as well as his coaches. That is something to consider as we go forward as well. That while we'd prefer not to be dealing with the injury crisis, what they're having to, the elasticity of coaching mind that they're having to kind of to reach down to is an important something you can take out of it. Me as a fan, as I just thought of it 2 seconds ago, it's something I'm going to take out of this year as well.
Yeah, because we were over a year on average less than them, and about 27 games of experience on average less than the team we played against. And you only have to look around the competition over, this year, such as Richmond and other football clubs across recent years who potentially face similar adversity or haven't faced similar adversity, but have perhaps young lists or something. And comparatively, I'd say that we're doing pretty fucking good.
Mm-hmm.
If you understand where I'm coming from, like, Port fans listening, you can like you hear that you're still 15th, and we're getting all this praise.
Just have a look at Josh Jenkins' Twitter account if you want to see someone saying dumb shit.
And his odd use of caps lock in particular spots, which is a bit weird. But yeah, we'll be reminded of where we sit. But like I said, you look at other clubs, both in this year and in recent years, who haven't performed to a similar standard with their adversity. It, I guess, again, reinforces perhaps a path that we're on. I know Mark Bickley is expecting us to go back, apparently. I don't really agree with his reasoning. For those who want to catch that, I believe SCNSA have put up his, forecast for 2027 and beyond. But I just can't help but feel optimistic. It's the type of person that I am, obviously. But I think I think enough evidence is there, is what I will say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I haven't actually I did see the post about what Bickley was saying. I haven't actually fully dove into what he said, but I can understand maybe a feeling of trepidation around where the ascent actually comes from, whether it's next year or the year after. But I think there's plenty of meat on the bone to enjoy about what Port Adelaide's doing, and particularly if they get their list management right in the next 18 months, as far as both obviously draft picks that are tied to us, as well as any potential free agent signings, which obviously there's a few big ones already being rumored. If they get all those things right, there's no reason to not have the hope with the structure that's already, and again, that ethos that is being built. We should get into the Lions. We've talked about Zato's name's just come up a couple of times. So I reckon start with the forward line just for a little bit of fun. And start with Mitch Zato. I just think there's something about the swagger he plays with. He plays with an immense amount of I belong here confidence and just calmness in how he carries himself on the field. There's something about, just turning into body language doctor for a moment, MD. The swagger he celebrated a couple of his goals in front of fans and just did this this is my turf kind of stuff with how he celebrated, and the fact that he kicks the 3 goals. He has one taken away from the arc. I thought he had a bag of 4. A couple of others that just nearly missed. It was a day of absolutely peppering the goals, no bad misses, kicked a few good ones, and just ultimately, and just whether it be from bombing from 50 or turning up in the right spot for a handball receive and bouncing into an open goal, his awareness for the space to create opportunity is a good thing. And then his body and his ability to affect contests is just as a hard nut in the forward line. The fact that it kind of just fell together for him to have a high goal scoring opportunity game, outside of just doing what his job is to do, which is just be a little bit of a hard nut pest as a small forward. Incredible stuff, and he has the best goal scoring day of our forwards. And geez, it could have been better if a couple of things had gone right for him. But again, it's nothing against him. He actually was close with a few of those, and I think he had an incredible day and felt like a bit of a breakout game for him, and really whets the appetite for what's to come for him. Where only a couple of weeks ago we're like, oh, it's a nice little toy to play with, but don't know what he's got. Now I'm kind of really intrigued as to what his back end of the season looks like, because with the injury crisis, it's probably like we might see Mitch Sadow play for the rest of the year as well.
Yeah, he definitely backs his own ability, and maybe it is a bit of the SSP influence. Like, I've got a point to prove. I think he's 21. Like, he's a little bit older. It's not like draft year type age, so he has a bit of that few extra years of lived experience and playing in the waffle, and he's come in and let's remember, we selected him over Jaden Stevenson, and at the time, while we were all pretty shocked based off of what we had heard, to me it seemed like they were making the long-term decision rather than the short-term decision with picking him over Jaden Stevenson, even though we all knew what we were going to get from Stevenson. But also, from a toughness point of view, it obviously the bit of a knock on Stevenson is his lack of toughness, if you will. Not to shit on the guy, because I was going to be happy if we were going to select him, just for the sheer fact that we knew what we were going to get, and at his best, which we were hopeful that we could bring out, we'd have a 25 to 30 goal forward on our hands. But the club has gone, this guy's got a bit of grit. He's a bit younger, so we can foster him along with the rest of our list profile. But yeah, he's fit as well. Like, I think that's one thing that also sticks out, and I think is also contributing to his progress, is he looks genuinely fit. But yeah, the swagger, like you mentioned, is palpable, but because he never takes a backward step. But he doesn't. Yeah, he's he's got that certain something that you can understand is quite attractive in the eyes of coaches, but particularly Josh Carr. Josh Carr, with what he wants to do. But having 6 shots on goal is just phenomenal. Like you said, in the adversity of not having our major spearhead, so having to make up the shots on goal that Mitch Georgiadis would generally take. And like, to be fair, I think Jack Whitlock also carried that load from a shots point of view quite well. And just had, but they all had a thirst for the contest. Not moving on from Mitch Sado too quickly, because I totally agree it was a breakout game for him, and just kind of, again, we extrapolate out and we manifest what, continual improvement can look like and how reliable that can be. That's obviously a big test for young or inexperienced players, is just that reliability, that consistency piece. But on a perfect Saturday at Adelaide Oval, fuck, that was entertaining.
Oh God, it really was, and it was really just highlighted by just the way he started, and it's just like, was it a shot? Was it a cross kind of stuff from soccer? But it's like he hits the line. And that's what I like about him too. His it's just that he actually seems to have, like, just from the small sample size we have, he's reasonable, backs himself in reasonably well, and has good reason to. Like, his disposal and his just kicks are relatively, like, he's not Shankopotamissing too many of them. Like, there's a kind of like a baseline of what you can expect from him, that they're kind of just going to end up, misses happen, but there's no, speaking of Jack Whitlock, he had a bit of a day of the yips, even though his impact on the forward line, you and I think we talked about it on the hill during the first half. I said, just as far as his impact on the structure, he's kind of taken over the Georgiades role. He's his best ability to do so in Whitlock, and just moving up the field, taking the marks. I think I joke somewhat facetiously, he's also taken over the fact that he's missing goals he should be kicking, but the young boys standing up and taking on that role. Zado obviously just coming to the side and saying, yeah, no, I'll kick some goals, but Whitlock doing what he was doing as well. It felt like, particularly in the first half, it actually felt like, this forward line, I mean, it makes you wonder what Mitch Georgiades in a game being played the exact same way, just with throwing him in there, would have looked like, and Jason Horne-Francis for that matter as well. We only take their 8 forward 50 marks, which is, 5 less than our seasonal average, but it felt like we were getting there was some joy to be had in our forward 50, and we were testing a decent Fremantle backline. Whitlock was putting Alex Pearce to work, putting him on skates at times. Alex Pearce was having a hell of a day, and probably was glad that he didn't have to worry about Georgiades roaming around down there as well. Like, the fact that this Fremantle backline at times was on skates a little bit must have been, they must have been just thanking their lucky stars that, Jason Horne-Francis and Mitch Georgiades weren't available to go down there as well, because they were these players, whether it be, I'm just even looking at pressure acts. Zado had 10, Durden had 10, Whitlock had 10, Joe Berry had 12. You figure, like, there's 42 pressure acts between 4 players. They're just these kind of, low buzz players as far as the general AFL spectrum of understanding of players go. All these guys were just buzzing around, doing things. Durden's kicking some goals. It was the other guys, and the forward line. it made me, again,
it truly was.
as far as overall ethos and structure. Yes, the forward line was somewhat, and there's been some criticism for Todd Marshall. I actually think Todd Marshall started the day well. Link up play, coming up to the ball, taking marks, just didn't continue on into the day well, and maybe that's partly to do with how the game got taken away from us a little bit. But beyond that,
I think he spent about 20 minutes getting wrapped up and concussion tested as well.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. There was
after that blood brawl.
Yeah. But I think he actually started the day okay. It's just the game wasn't going. But overall, I actually think the forwards did the best they could under the circumstances. And I again, outside of finishing, the finishing is just like, it's almost like I don't even talk about it at this point, because I'm like, yeah, okay, so Whitlock did the Georgiades thing this week. Like, what are you going to do? Like, I don't know. The one thing
Yeah.
I will say before I throw to you, I think maybe just a general blanket rule on maybe Josh Carr needs to come out and say, no one is kicking around the corner when you don't fucking need to for the rest of the year. It's not happening. There will be in-house fines for any player that tries it. Back yourselves in for a set shot, because I think you and I as fans, we want to see players perfect the set shot first, and then this around the corner stuff. I think that's like when you're 100 games into your career and you're understanding what you're doing, maybe that's when you can throw that in there. But I don't want to see Jack Whitlock try. And I think he tried it at a point where the game was just like he was having all sorts of troubles anyway. But his set shot fundamentals at times are pretty good. Joe Barry's had one this year. I just think young players should, in a developmental phase of our team as well, do not just for the rest of this year. I don't want to see another player go around the corner when they don't need to. It's only when you're in the pocket and you actually it is, you know, you need to hook around because you can't see the gap between the posts. If you can see healthy gap between the posts, you shouldn't be going around the corner. I want to see Josh Carr be like, blanket rule, no one's doing this. You young players, figure out your set shots. You've got the time to. We're not making finals. We don't care if you kick it or not. Just focus on the set shots and the fundamentals. That's my only criticism out of the way we played in the forward line this year. This week again was a couple. Seeing that happen again and seeing them miss, which seems to be happening more often than not for what Jack Ginnivan tells us is a very, very a low risk,
reliable shot. Yeah,
they hit the belly of the ball a lot.
Yeah, and again the youth, and we got to be careful here that we don't sound like two nuffies where the game is passing them by as well, because they do apparently practice it a lot, and we all do see the merits of it, but more so, like you said, in those more acute angles and things like that, where I think the AFL industry has lifted conversion from the pocket in that regard. But it's just the times that these things are being chosen. It seems like the three that stick out in my mind, the two from Whitlock and the one from Berry, they seem to come at times where we just need some calm. Go back, kick the goal. Momentum. Or either continue momentum or bring it back in our favour. So yeah, I'm not against the blanket ban in those scenarios. And keeping in mind, and like this is, you mentioned earlier where, if things went our way late, that we could have really made Freo scared. Because I thought we fought out. The third quarter was abysmal. To me, it looked like we were still catching our breath from a frenetic first half, and Freo shifted a gear, which we couldn't keep up with, and they severely made it count on the scoreboard to the tune of what was a 5-goal run in the blink of an eye. But keeping in mind that late in that fourth quarter, Burgoyne obviously kicks his goal, snap from the pocket, which is okay. And then Zato with the edge, and unfortunately, we want the edge when Josh Jenkins hit the post in 2018. We don't want the edge when Mitch Zato kicks a weldy from the pocket.
It was the same fucking post too, wasn't it? God damn it.
It was, yeah, that fucking post. But Zato kicks that point, but then, Whitlock has that opportunity not long after. So the margin is at 21 points. Whitlock has an opportunity to bring it in the teens. And again, kick your 10 meters out. The angle isn't that bad. Kick the goal, make it interesting. But then not only that, to rub salt in the wounds, Freo go, it feels to me coast to coast. It may not have been that simple, even though I watched the fourth quarter just before. But what feels like coast to coast, they kick the goal and then they push that back out to 27 points. And then they get that late behind to make it the final margin. But those are the things. Those are the small margins. And like broadly, I totally agree. Like Jack Whitlock and Dante Visentini early were causing Pearce some issues. And you mentioned the marks, but we also found ourselves getting a couple of handy free kicks just due to the bit of chaos and what's going on here, nature of the first quarter and the second quarter. But a defense that is pretty well rounded, pretty balanced, decent amount of experience in it, and again, it's that thirst for the contest. We hear about Jack Whitlock's thirst for the contest, and I think that was on show. He was continually pushing Pearce, whether it be Pearce, Ryan, or Cox, to defend, and found himself with the reward from a shot on goal point of view, but didn't, much like Mitch Georgiadis, lent back on his kicks far too often, and it makes you wonder why. Obviously, we don't have the answers, and like you said, we're not expecting us to convert from these shots, and funnily enough, we end up 11-9, so we're on the positive end of the ledger, but we just, you rack your brain at some of these more simple efforts. Not that we were the only team with simple efforts that were missed on the day. Shout out Mason Cox.
Come off from Wilson Gray.
But no, in the absence of our key figurehead, Whitlock, Dante, which, he maybe come up in midfield if we want to move on to there. Really impressed with his game. Just again, flying the flag, much like my praise from the St Kilda game. But they found a way to work in unison. Joe Berry just kicks an absolute fucking banger of a goal. But all the highlights are with that. But much like my sentiments with JHF coming up against the likes of North Melbourne, coming up against Collingwood for the connotations of the history behind those clubs, number one draft pick, ex-club, things like that. I think for Joe Berry, coming up against Fremantle will always be interesting in the eyes of Port Adelaide supporters, because Murphy Reid is obviously playing on the same ground. And I, looking at the statistics, I thought it was quite interesting that Murphy Reid had a pretty quiet game. I thought in the end, and their statistics are fairly comparable but Joe Berry was playing as a forward and Reid playing more as that kind of transitional midfield type, which was pleasing to me. The goal obviously gets the highlight, deservedly so. But you mentioned Joe Berry's pressure acts. He got involved in the play. Not everything worked out for him, but I don't expect it to at this point in time. But it was just satisfying that he too, like everyone else, came to play. And on the day, with that handy goal, I think he actually takes the chocolates in that matchup, even though they weren't directly matched up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just having a look on Wheeler ratings on the player ratings for the day. Joe Berry had a player rating of 9.8 for the day. Murphy Reid was at 3.9. So, and their predicted ratings are basically flip-flopped on that. So, yeah, Murphy Reid definitely had a quiet day. And Joe Berry, obviously, the goal probably does a fair bit of work. But outside of that, I just think he had some good connectivity moments. I mean, he was at 71.4% disposal efficiency. Murphy Reid was at 60. So there was just that, like, as you said there, I think Murphy Reid had one more disposal, but as far as efficiency and impact on the game goes, Joe Berry was the more impactful player on the day's play, and with 5% less time on ground. So, snaps Joe Berry, he may be a draft bust, but we see high hopes for him. And
it's not to broadly shit on kids, because that's not what we're about. It is just a keen comparison, and it just goes to show that young men just can be afforded the luxury of playing football, and they are afforded the luxury of time, and it's not always going to work out for you. Like it. Murphy Reid had a down game and is lauded for his disposal, but unfortunately for him, 60%. And Joe Berry gets to finish this game and go, I played pretty well. Maybe I deserve to be picked where I got picked. But, that's not to exaggerate it more than it was. It was a 14 disposal game from a small forward. kicked a worldie of a goal, put on pressure, a touch over 250 metres gain. In that forward group, he definitely belongs, and I think drew the praise of the commentary team as well.
Yeah, and I think he's
his
just
progression. Sorry.
Yeah, and he's just coming along really, really nicely this year as well. And Ken Hinkley certainly had some nice things to say about him. And as we do transition to midfield, you did bring up Vicentini. I wanted to just to back off of that and just say, like, I think we talked about it, possibly even just last week, as we talked about Vicentini kicking a goal last week and saying, if we're going to be playing two rucks, we want to at least be seeing a goal a week out of one of them, and even better would be a couple. We obviously see a couple out of Vicentini, and I think just applause to him that he's kind of put together a couple of nice weeks where he's still. I think I said to you on the day that he's kind of like his ability to take a couple more maybe of those half contested marks down forward will be just like his happy learned how to putt kind of moment, because I think that's just probably the shortcoming there at times is like there's a few marks that just he doesn't quite. I think a better contested marker would be getting, like he's just like that's just a little bit. A few of those are going on by the wayside, but when he's kicking a worldie, he finds a way, and also the fact that he can compete with Alex Pearce, and Alex Pearce just has to not give up on the play, but does just give away a free kick, because all he can do is try to just wrap his arms around him and probably, I assume at that moment, just hope that the umpire doesn't see it. The umpire, of course, does see it. And pays a free, so
bit dark,
he's essentially, it's and Alex Pearce just he had a hell of a day against both of those guys, and the both goals that Vicentini scores on the day are directly opponent to Alex Pearce in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, one a worldie and one a free kick against. So he has his day, and if you're going to be obviously again we're transitioning to midfield, but if you're going to be the secondary ruck, taking I think he had 16 ruck contests on the day, or maybe it was more than that. I might be thinking of Mason Cox's numbers, but of the second rucks. But Vicentini did have the 16 ruck contests for the day. So if you're going to have 16 ruck contests for the day, you're going to spend a fair bit of time as down forward or whatever. Make contests, make it hard on the opposition. You're going to be creating accountability, and in that turn, you might find your way to 2 goals. So for him to kind of back up the ruck that way, that's exactly what we want Vicentini and the side to do. If we're going to be, we're kind of be forced into it out of necessity to go back to the 2 ruck system after a few weeks without it. But I think he's actually kind of started to find his groove a little bit over the last few weeks.
He has freedom to just play ball. Not that he didn't beforehand, but the last couple of weeks in particular, it just seems that he's just giving way to being a bit of a wrecking ball, a tall wrecking ball in that, and just providing a contest. Like I said, the thing that pleased me the most in the St Kilda game was just the second efforts, the ground ball game. But we got something a little bit different this week. And, a lot of comparisons have been made to season 2025. And I think back, not the Adelaide Oval game, but I think back to the game that we played in Perth last year when it ended up bucketing down with rain. And Luke Jackson absolutely took us to the cleaners. I have a feeling it was just Vicentini, though, on that specific day. So obviously any game where a team has to come up against Luke Jackson, who is getting all the deserved flowers this season for the year that he's having, it's a huge mental battle, but it's also a huge physical battle. And that lies with Jordan Sweet and Dante Vicentini. Probably more so Sweet. But like you said, we end up the game. Jordan Sweet has a goal assist, and Dante kicks the two goals himself. So in the realm of the ruck battle, and 36 hitouts combined to our favour. 37 to their 35, and we finished with 13 to advantage to their 9. So a huge tick again for those 2 guys, but Stewie Drew, the preparation, because the last time these guys probably would have played against Luke Jackson, they probably come away on the losing side of things. And so it's nice for them to turn it around. And obviously we all know the year that Jordan Sweet's having, but Vicentini has a part to play, particularly, we've seen what the 2-ruck system can do, say, in that showdown, in the strategy of wearing down the Riley Thilthorpe of that setup, because he's not the genuine ruck. But Freo run the 2-ruck system himself. So it's kind of not mono e mono, it's more duo e duo. And I come away feeling like we probably get the chocolates. It's not by much. But again, a team with a Luke Jackson in it, it could have been far, far worse. And, from a centre clearance point of view, we take the chocolates there, which Luke Jackson has a good hand in typically. And he finishes with a goal himself. But particularly with our key defensive posts, he could have ended up with a bit more in his tally. And I like that we were testing him in our forward line as well. We were dragging him around at times too, which was ultimately pleasing.
Yeah, I was actually just having a look at the stats from last year, and yeah, you were right that the game that we played in Fremantle against in that bucketing down game, I think it was just before the bye in 2025. It was just Vicentini versus Jackson, and then last year in the return game, that like close loss that we had against Freo at the back end, towards the back end of last year, it was actually a Sean Darcy versus and Luke Jackson versus Jordan Sweet on his own, and Jordan Sweet actually had a good day that day as well, with 33 hitouts versus Darcy and Jackson combining for 23. So, and Jackson only having the 8. It was Darcy predominantly. So it's kind of funny that we've seen a flip-flop, a team in Fremantle that has probably been the one that has been the most talked about, particularly probably the start of the year when the ruck rules changing, about the dual ruck setup, and then we go into this game, and Darcy's in the Magoos, and Mason Cox is the second, and we're the ones running around with Vicentini and Sweet and operating at reasonable impact. And of course, the Jordan Sweet game in the middle gave our center, our makeshift center line and midfield group a really good first look at it. And I was really, really impressed with, Miles Bergman has the second most CBAs outside of Jordan Sweet. So he takes on the responsibility. There was some nice little link-up play, like Miles Bergman and Jace Burgoyne kind of doing the Zach Butters and Jason Horne-Francis 1-2 thing, like one of them getting the handball out, and Jace Burgoyne had a couple of moments that he was the one bursting out of the backside of the centre stoppage and getting a kick out. And it was really, really pleasing to see. Just I can't really criticise much midfield in a game that we were missing so much of the star power that we're used to seeing. So I kind of just sit here and go, plaudits to the ones that took the opportunity that was given to them and actually gave us an opportunity, a platform to try and win the game. Obviously, we don't win it, but we win centre clearance 18-9, an incredible domination at the centre bounce, and I'm really, really pleased. Obviously, I think we've talked about it a little bit over the past couple of weeks about just Jace Burgoyne starting to have a good run of form again after we've been saying we want the penny to drop a little bit for him. And last week we kind of criticised the matchup on Naz, but just the fact that he actually got to do a little bit of centre bounce work without having to do a tagging job, so to speak. He was able to do some, just actually play, dominant, the alpha midfielder, so to speak, a little bit at times. It was nice to see. And then Bergman getting his chance again for the first major midfield minutes since the midpoint of last year, where he maybe up until the point he could kick the wrong way in the showdown. Like, just some of these guys that haven't had a whole lot of maybe alpha midfield time and positive midfield time got to have some of that, and actually were a part of the reason that we were in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. If nothing else, the midfielders that we had there, by and large, were what you could categorize as workmen. Your Miles Bergman, your Joe Richards, obviously Ollie Wines and Willem Drew. They're honest footballers. They get to work. Bergman has that bit of X factor where he has some powerful drive and he's got a big kick on him. But I thought the blend of Jace Burgoyne having a bit more midfield time added a bit of maybe classiness. Maybe he's not in the upper echelons of, X factor or class, but he wasn't there to be the grunt work player. He was kind of the polish on top, funnily enough. And I think he's still got a lot more room to develop in that regard. But he finishes the day with 4 center clearances himself. And yeah, I loved their spacing. And like you said, the handball chains around, particularly center stoppage, the triangular work, it kind of, it reminded me a lot of like basketball drills, just that triangular work, just making sure you're spaced in the right way. And I guess this is the luxury that some of the higher teams on the ladder are afforded. They're a bit more in tune with that. But again, it can't be understated that these guys don't usually do this together or to the volume that they're expected to do on the weekend. And yeah, for large portions of the game, it looked like they were all in sync. Justin Timberlake. So I was, watching the replay back. There was some, Jace Burgoyne exits from the front of stoppage, but it's because of, some grunt work from Ollie Wines on the deck, flicking it out to a Willem Drew or a Miles Bergman. And then just knowing that Burgoyne is there, it seems kind of innate at times. And Bergman also had his moments on the end as that kind of exiter, for want of a better word, out of the stoppage and to, kick a ball inside 50 or find a target to change some angles. Really impressive effort. Obviously, we could talk about the positives all day. It was a bit disappointing, though, that we did get, kind of handily beaten in that third quarter to the degree. I think the disposal numbers were just ridiculous, particularly in that first 10 minutes or first half of that third quarter. Just goes to show that when things don't go your way and against a good team, that it quickly unraveled. It unraveled. And like I said, to me, particularly on replay, it looked like we were still kind of, we needed an extra kind of 5 to 10 minutes of that halftime break. We put it all out there in the first half, and credit to them. Like Willem Drew, first game as skipper, flicks to him, 4 clearances from the center to halftime. But unfortunately, he didn't add to that after halftime from a center clearance point of view, which is a little disappointing. He kind of fell out of the game a little bit, even though his player rating was still pretty decent on the day. I think he ends up with 13.9, but I think a lot of his work was done in that first half. Not on an island in that regard. But again, we see the possibilities. We see what levers we have to pull. The big question mark on Miles Bergman, because of his, injury woes and the settling of him down back, it was like, well, we're expecting him to play midfield. Like, what, is he going to get that chance? What's it going to look like? And I think Saturday, if anything, was just a good settler. He ends up with the 18 disposals as well, so he has a decent impact in his moments, but you're probably wanting a bit more, particularly with the amount of CBA time that he got. But it's still just a bit of a settler to go, okay, like if Zach Butters leaves, if we put Miles Bergman in the middle, we're not obviously going to get a Zach Butters-esque return, but we know the guy can actually play in that vicinity, which was pleasing. And then, the growth of Jace Burgoyne, 24 disposals, 75% disposal efficiency. Another just well-rounded game. I said that he wasn't there to be the grunt work, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't apply a hard tackle or go in for a ground ball. I think he ended up with our third most ground balls. Third most ground ball gets for the day, Jace Burgoyne. So it's not like he's afraid of a contested possession. But you can see a
couple of really good 1%ers as well. Like, including a Falcon smother. So, like, he just did everything.
I mean, saved a goal. Yeah, at the death kind of thing with a smother as well. But you can just tell that he's that, well, like his uncle, potentially could be the silky smooth mover once he, crosses that 100-game barrier, which he is, it is on the horizon. I think he's in that 70 to 80 game mark, if not crossed 80 games now. So, again, these are the kind of steps, these are the kind of inklings or windows into the future that we wanted to see out of Saturday, and I think we come away in that regard with a little bit of confidence. Before I hand back to you, we all, in our heart of hearts, we all wanted it. We all wanted Ollie Wines to just get down and dirty, increase the time on ground, just put his big frame in the way of CNX Tuesdays, get the ground ball, dish it out, not be tackled. And, it was heartwarming for me. We've obviously watched Ollie Wine's whole career, much like a lot of people listening have. And, a game like that on the weekend when he is afforded the luxury of plying his trade and, being one of the head honchos in there, it does kind of show what we will miss when he eventually leaves, for me, because a player like that is hard to replicate. Like, he's a unit. He's an absolute unit that just dictates space. When the ball is in his vicinity, he decides generally what happens with it, not anyone else. And it's a rare peg to have in your board. But obviously warmed the cockles to see Ollie just go to work, turn back the clock a little bit on the weekend.
When needed most as well. It was probably the big key probably going into the game for us on the Port Adelaide side was, any key to even having a hope in hell of being competitive in this game, which we obviously know we were in the end, was probably hinged on Ollie Wines kind of being the veteran leader in the absence of every other star that we have. He is obviously a Brownlow medalist, so his pedigree is second to none as far as what he can do when he gets to his best. And obviously he's never going to be Brownlow medal winning best, but he was probably one of his better performances under the circumstances. He just got, as you said, got down to work, got dirty. I think I had in my notes, there was a Joe Richards tackle on Brayshaw late in the first quarter that I think ended up in Joe Richards' goal. Ollie Wines kind of comes in, and I don't know if he puts Brayshaw on he puts someone on the ground.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, puts him on his ass.
Yeah, it's just good leadership shit. Like coming in, I don't even know if he needed to fly the flag at that point, but he did. Like, he's just like, yeah, I'm going to fucking, body up to some cunts, and this is what's going to happen right now. And it was
you're the young buck, but I'm the old bull.
It's quintessential, and it was really heartwarming to see. And I think Ken Hinkley in the commentary was saying, we've obviously there's been a bit of discussion this year about his future, and at one point this year you've got people talking about serious questions about how he's going with his knee, but just going on the commentary, Ken Hinkley, which I assume he's got his connections, said that Ollie's feeling better as the year goes on, so that there's
his connection is probably Ollie himself.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Yeah. Yes, my connection is I texted Ollie and said, "How is your knee going?" And Ollie said, "Yeah, it's going pretty good the second half."
Essentially, like family, those two at this point in time.
Yeah. When you consider, the stories about Ollie getting drafted and crying about it and not ever intending to sign another contract, and then he wants to retire a Port player now. So that was all under the tutelage of Ken. So yeah, no, fantastic stuff in the mids, and I can't speak more highly of that effort against, again, the ladder leading midfield that it is against Freo. Everything we're coming up against. I think the only real stop around the ground stoppage got a little bit more the other way of Freo once they got numbers. They could get numbers around the ball, and just some of that class could tell and what they could do. But just the fact, just looking at it in isolation as far as our future goes, to win the centre clearance battle that handily, in particular at certain times of the game. And even in that third quarter, I look at, goals, the score from turnover numbers, the turnover numbers is really what hurt us. I think they kicked 10 goals something. 10 goals, 868 to 4-5. So it's a turnover differential of almost 40 points. We actually win. we win score from stoppage by 16 points. So, obviously, I think it was 3 or 4 goals from centre, in particular. So that's where a lot of that comes from. But, even some of those goals, it was the Elia kick in the early part of that Fremantle kind of onslaught that kind of gets turned back over, and Elia's out of position, and it goes back to his direct opponent, and they kick a goal. And they just, that third quarter in particular, before we get to just talking about a back line, before we close off on the lines, just that third quarter, just what I saw from that was, I mean, you mentioned just coming out of halftime, maybe needing a little bit more time. It was kind of like, the first half was some good sex, and then at halftime had a cigarette. And then in the second half, it was like, the partner's like, I want to go again. And Port was just like, no, I'm still finishing my cigarette. And no, we're fucking going. And it's just like, because it was such a good first half. I was just like, no, I'm not ready to go yet. And it's just like, that's kind of, but in the actual play of it, it was just like Freo did lock in. They knew that getting involved in close quarters battle with Port in the first half was where Port's won, everything that we can do was going to be based on pressure and ability to disrupt Fremantle's game. So they kind of took the game away from us, and I can't.
And they were over-possessing the ball, Fremantle, in that first half.
So they
which
kind of
played right into our hands.
Exactly. And we and Freo can be better and dispose, and they just did take away a possession or two, a handball or two in that first 10 minutes of the third quarter, and just eyes down, take the kick option a little bit sooner. If they're going to handball, they spread and found space a little bit more, and they just took the ball away from us. And without our our stars on the field to be out of space and do the things that we do, that we can do better when we've got a little bit more fully fit. Watching the replay in particular, I mean, watching the day, I was just like a little bit like they are just disposing the ball better. But watching the replay in particular, I was just like, I couldn't even be like, oh, we're not pressuring. The pressure number probably dropped simply because we weren't close enough to it. But I just think Freo just locked in on what they needed to do. Just said, let our stars go to work, dispose of the ball, eyes down, find the best forward trio in the competition and give them the ball and let them go to work. And they did. They still didn't tear us apart, but they just locked in enough to get the gap they needed. And I can't even put too much blame on us in that aspect. Again, we looked a little bit flat-footed, but I don't even know if it was that much. I just think Freo actually just took the game away from us a little bit, and we just didn't have we had put a lot of work into that first half, so probably were a touch gassed coming out of the break, and you kind of have had that euphoria of a great first half. You've had a come down. You've got to get yourselves back to the game. Whilst Freo have kind of probably skated on their heels a little bit for the first half, not having to put full effort in. They've probably had a bit of a bake from Longmuir, and so there was a little bit of like ships passing the night stuff of like one team deciding to lock in and know that they are one of the best teams in the comp when they do, versus a team that went, we fucking put everything into it. And just, I can't put too much blame on us. If we were competing for finals and had our stars out there, I'd be maybe a little bit more critical, but I can be critical of the fact that we don't dispose of it well at times and whatnot. But it's also, I'm being critical of a lot of SSPs and guys. Even Christian Moraes had some moments he'd probably want to take back, but he's just coming back into the side and he's still a young player, and I've got a lot of hope for him in the future as well. So it's like, they're all learning from this, and ultimately, I just think that first 10 minutes of the second half was just Freo locking in and being a team that knows how to take the game away from a team when they want to, and they didn't do what they did a hell of a more hurtful job in Sydney last week. So it could have been worse. Yeah. I think we battled against it. Battled against a bit of a tsunami reasonably well, considering.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just sprung something to mind. I mentioned in my snippet in the preview that like we were going to see mistakes in this game, but if we were seeing mistakes from our players trying to create or take the game on, then I was going to be happy with that. And I can't go back on that. And yeah, you mentioned Moraes, for example. Jordan Sweet obviously trying to bite off more than he can chew on a couple of occasions. Like, I'd much prefer that. Obviously, I'd much prefer them to say take the first option and you know, make those decisions a bit quicker and not get in trouble. But I'd much prefer, if they are going to get in trouble, I'd much prefer them trying to take the game on, be positive, than trying to regress on the field and you know, be defensive. But yeah, like you mentioned, yeah, Sydney copped 100 points and a half against Fremantle. I mean, Frederick kicks their 5th goal in that run, 12 minutes 56 seconds into the third quarter, and then the margin is 8 points net from that point until the end of the game. So, and it is a key characteristic of our losses, is just we can succumb to a run of goals being kicked on us. But that's no different across history to any other young or up-and-coming side. It's just you generally get picked apart for a quick burst in one quarter. And if you are a competitive team, up-and-coming team, that's generally the difference. And it was. One thing I will say, though, Amos probably got a bit fortunate, you know, if I'm going to go there.
That's a good transition to defense.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, I was going to say, Aaliyah, fuck's sake, another weird turnover goal moment, which is really the only blemish on his day. I think nothing else really springs to mind. And, you know, leading that back line as well as he could have, out, it's just a weird, like, what were you trying to do? Much like some of the other moments this year, St Kilda gather round, first showdown, it's just like, what? But then, yeah, BZT got a bit of a bath, unfortunately. Has me really missing Asava Radicale. Unfortunately, I checked before. BZT had 4 contested defensive one-on-ones and he lost 3 of them. So, you asked the question last week against St Kilda, you know, if BZT was there. Yeah, unfortunately, BZT, and look, he tried his guts out. I think he was one of our leaders for 1%ers, if I'm thinking correctly. I'm not 100% sure. There was one small kind of thing that you could give him credit for, but it kind of had me going.
He had 8 1%ers.
Yeah. Which is a fair effort from a 1%ers point of view, but it had me going, if Asava was playing, does Jai Amos finish with 4 goals kind of thing? But, you know, we could do it with a lot of players in a lot of our lines, and unfortunately. But, yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think BZT was unlucky, and the crowd reaction to the one in particular for the high free kick straight in front, I can't remember. I have a feeling Amos got a bit fortunate with another one. I don't know if it was in the third quarter, but I think he had 2 dubious free kicks right in front of goal. Oh, it was Logan Evans in the first quarter.
Yeah.
First quarter. Sorry. Yeah. Getting him over the shoulder. Yeah, I just think a couple of really ticky touchwood 50-50s, and technically in the eyes of Port Adelaide supporter in the BZT one, I think he got caught high first and then took the contested mark, to be fair, and unfortunately the umpire saw it a different way, and Amos goals. So, you know, a bit of misfortune in that 5-goal run in the third quarter. But yeah, ultimately Freo lifted and we couldn't arrest that jolt of momentum until it was probably a bit too late. And then we're kind of managing the game from there until the final siren.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one for the defensive line because they do take the 16 marks inside 50. They get some good opportunities from their forward triumvirate, and as well as obviously, you know, your Isaiah Dudleys and Fredericks and co running around. But I think, you know, a lot of those marks come from some pretty good just moments of good disposal inside 50, and I still...
Yeah, we're talking about the number one team at the end of the day.
Yeah, and again, like I said, it's a forward trio that have kicked out. I think Amos and Treacy are both on over 40 goals this year. I'm pretty sure I saw that correctly earlier this week, and I think Patrick Voss has got 30 odd. So we're talking about it's 100 goals between three. Imagine if Whitlock, Georgiades, and I don't know, fucking Marshall had that much between them, we'd be fucking losing our minds. So like it's insane numbers that they're getting from their kind of their trio, and they're in incredible form. And we're a depleted defense with Brendan Zerk-Thatcher. I didn't think at one point this year I was like, he's not getting back into this side if unless injuries happen, and of course injuries have happened. Harrison Ram was a late out. So we haven't even mentioned yet Jacob Ware, who played in this game, wasn't even meant to play in this game because Harrison Ram was meant to be in there. So they had to kind of restructure within an hour of the game as to what their kind of defensive game plan was going to be as it was against this trio. So yeah, we get beaten. 16 marks inside 50 against is probably not the kind of numbers they're looking for, but against the team that we were playing and the kind of duress we're under with injuries and whatnot, and the fact that overall the structure of our team still made it difficult for Freo at times in this one. I can't be too critical. The structure allowed Freo to ultimately win, but I still go Josh Lai had some great efforts. Logan Evans was really, really good, I think, as well. Aaliyah, obviously, just a general. I think individually the performances were okay. Like you said, Brendan Zerk-Thatcher maybe losing those one-on-ones and whatnot, but I think individually the performances were actually okay. It's just like the overall, individually they weren't going to beat this forward line. So it's like, that's where my that's where my praise goes. It's like individually the performances, I saw some good things out of all of them. Yes, structurally the result didn't go our way, and ultimately they did get their wins in their forward line more often than not. But I still see some development things there, and just the attitude towards particularly the first half made things tough on them, and ultimately again we were in with a shot of winning this game for a fair bit of it. When you look at the time in front numbers, they're pretty close. It's just like, it was a I'm pretty pleased with a lot of things I saw on the day, and again with the duress we're under with injuries, like I can't criticize too much, and that goes to the defensive line as well. Despite the fact, if you go objectively, you go 16 marks inside 50, that's shit house. But when you consider the nuance and context of it, I can't be too super critical.
Yeah, that's it. Like I said, we're talking about the number one team in the competition right now with a three-headed monster, and I'm pretty pleased that Voss only kicked one goal for the game. And yeah, I thought Aaliyah, the matchup on Tracy was going pretty well. Again, it probably coincided with the team as a whole. Tracy only kicked one goal to halftime and then grabbed his other two after halftime. One off the back of Aaliyah's own turnover. I think that was in that sequence of play. Mason Cox taking a mark over Logan Evans, that shit's just going to happen. Thankfully, he missed. But I like that lens that you looked at the defense in, because, I agree where you can look at all these individual players and go, yeah, they had some nice moments, your DBJs, of course, and even Lockie Jones, unfortunately he had a few Butterfinger mark moments, but he finishes the game with 7 marks and 2 of them intercepts. So 17 posies, moving the ball at 70.6%. So I thought by and large he had a pretty serviceable game.
He just had that one where he just he was kicking towards the boundary and I think it goes over the fence, like out of the full. I think it's that one coming out of the north end, so I guess that was when we were defending in the third quarter. He just kicks it and it just shanks. And it's just like, it's a Lockie Jones moment. But again, he's shortening the amount of maybe, the Lockie Jones moments. And I say that, somewhat facetiously in the fact that the people, the people that were criticizing, overcritical of him at times. But he's got less of those moments and he's doing more of the things that we want Lockie Jones to do.
I think so. I think by and large, He's getting continuity in his football. His body's treated him kindly. Touch wood that continues for the rest of the season because,
Not
funnily
Luke
enough,
Jackson too kindly, tell you that.
yeah. Well, yeah, putting Luke Jackson on his ass fairly early was definitely a highlight of mine. And again, one of the, just the moment of hilarity, just enjoying the contest in that first half. But yeah, funnily enough, in an injury crisis, Lockie Jones hasn't really been involved in that. Now I've put the knocker on him, of course, but we're doing it for Dougie. So look,
or the wood.
Yeah.
Putting on YouTube and touching all the wood.
O'Brien for his debut, nothing to really write home about. Just
energetic.
He'll be better. Yeah, he'll be better for the exposure. And we'll look to see how his journey progresses from here now that he has had a taste of it. I think, one of those marks inside 50, I can't remember who it was. It was a mismatch. I think it was one of Tracy's shots on goal. I think he ended up missing it, thankfully, but mismatch on Logan Evans, I believe, on the lead, and O'Brien had the opportunity to come in front, and he kind of hesitated and watched the contest, and you could see Lockie Jones and Alir just like kind of one level outside of that contest going like, you really need to go across there and just cut off the lead. But all lessons learnt for a debutant. Yeah,
I mean, throwing an SSP signing in as a debutant against the ladder leading juggernaut that Freo have been so far is like, that's is hiding to nothing. He's coming in and still valuable experience in a team that played competitive football in the day is good stuff. So. Yeah, anything else on any of the lines, or ready to move on? I think we've done a fairly good, robust job of getting through them in actually reasonable time, considering, as Jamie knows, I'm in delirium with some extra.
Don't worry, so am I. So keen to move on. Let's get into the segments and continue the positivity.
Yes, there's some good shit to get into here. So of course we move on first to the Wilson Gray.
Down, Gray doing brilliantly, getting through to Monfries. That's Gray at his best.
Wilson kicks hard and kicks truly.
Robbie! Let him entertain you! Oh, let him entertain you indeed. And there was certainly some entertainment on this day, on Saturday. Of course, the Wilson Gray Award, the award for efforts on the field that to just give us the warm and fuzzies outside of goal scoring opportunities, of course. The reminder, as per usual, every week that the Wilson Gray and the Goal of the Week nominations that will be upcoming as well will be posted on the Instagram stories on Wednesday evening. So we're recording this on Tuesday, the 21st of July. So Wednesday evening on the 22nd, the nomination videos will be up in the Instagram stories with a poll to vote on your choice out of our nominations that are upcoming. They, of course, are posted on Wednesday evening and are available on Instagram stories for 24 hours. And we appreciate everyone. The votes are increasing every week, the amount of people that are coming in and voting. So we really do appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
I do appreciate it. And I love seeing what people are picking, because even the weeks that we see, sometimes we have weeks where we're like, nah, surely no one's picking this one. Like, this is the out and out favorites. People still do. Shout out, Jamie's got a few beers to buy for I think his Goal of the Week nomination that he had last week.
Hit me up.
So shout out. Yeah. Get into Jamie's DMs. The Wilson Gray Award, of course, last week's winner. It was a Bam Bam Xavier Bammett double feature last week, and Bam Bam forcing the turnover on Bradley Hill, which was Jamie's nomination. Won the vote with 64% of the vote over my 36% of the vote for my nomination of Bam Bam bamming Liam Stocker almost into the point post last week. So Xavier Bammett doing some good things. That got us Wilson Gray nomination warm and fuzzies last week. I get to go first on my nomination this week, and I actually just talked about this one a minute or two ago, but I am going to nominate Lockie Jones laying the shoulder into Luke Jackson about 5 minutes into the 5 minutes into the first quarter. I think it was just before it happened as well. The commentary team were talking about Lockie Jones having some sore ribs out of last week, and then he lays the shoulder down on Luke Jackson, and you have
the boy from
Rashudo
Butte.
and Rashudo's doing, they must be he's not too sore, Joey. So like, just
had a little fumble, worried out of it by Drew Jones. He hurt those ribs last week against St Kilda. Good to see him out there and throwing his weight around. Pressure's hot early.
I don't look too sore, Joey.
No, he's fine. Competition. There he is. Putting Jackson on his backside.
The big unicorn.
And I think I turned to you on the day as it happened, as we were both like, because you were just, look at Lockie Jones. And I looked at you, and I think I said something along the lines of unicorns are mortal. So, yeah.
Yeah, you did.
Lockie Jones absolutely laying down Luke Jackson is my nomination this week.
Yeah, fantastic nom. Yeah, I heard the joy in your voice when you touched on it just before, and also reminded me that it was top of my shortlist in terms of sequential. That was the first one I put down. Just on Bammett though, I mean, we touched on him at the top of the show, but like he doesn't even have to do much, and I'm just like, you're great. He had a few almost moments. Like he took a couple of specky attempts that didn't quite come off, and I just would have liked him to get on the goals, but yeah, he just does stuff around the ground, and I'm like, you look comfortable at AFL level, and if you're taking speckies and putting your head in the hole, then fucking oath. So it's my turn to nominate. That's a good one. I am actually going. Look, on the theme of Bammett, later in the first quarter, in the height, of our pressure, just on pressure, we went at over 300 at one point. Just noticing in commentary, it must have been for the slightest amount of time, but that's just like, no wonder we were knackered. Yeah, the limit clearly does not exist. 345, I think. Yeah, our pressure was at one point, but yeah, late in the first quarter, I've got 6 minutes on the clock roughly. Bammett runs down our man Pearce.
50. Ryan was there. Over to Pearce, who wasn't sure where to go. Bammett ran him down. Again, the pressure excellent from the power.
Let's have a look. Looked like a handball to me. Maybe he didn't.
To affect holding the ball, I believe it was. So yeah, on the Bammett love, continuing that on. He can do no wrong at the moment. Xavier Bammett, the Bam Bam man, Wham Bam. Thank you, man. That's my nomination, and I'll buy you a carton if you vote for it. No, just joking.
He's gonna have
a carton of milk.
Okay, Dwayne.
yeah.
No, good nom by you. I had
guilty as charged with the milks.
Milk was a bad choice. I had noted that one in my replay of the game as well. That tackle on Pearce, as you said, right in the height of the pressure, and when you've got a mid-season draftee just tackling down the Moose captain of Fremantle, and then Pearce just looked genuinely flummoxed by the pressure in the first half, just like, what the fuck's going on? I wasn't.
Yeah, he did.
Two very, very good nominations. I look forward to seeing what the people go with in the nominations. We'll move on to goal of the week, which I think will equally have there's a few good options there.
Monfries has kicked a goal. Unbelievable. Haven't seen anything like that. It's gone at right angle.
Flashpoint. Stevie Motlop. What a time. He is floating on air now.
All righty, goal of the week. Jamie gets to go first this week, but I will just mention that last week's winner was my nomination of Luco and Berry Magic. Of course, a reminder that Jack Lukosius, the little assist back off the point line to Joe Berry to volley it through. One was 65% of the vote, to 35% of the vote of Jamie's nomination of Ilya's goal as forward. So again, if you were one of the 35% that voted for Jamie's nomination, he owes you a beer.
How good. Yeah, I owe you a beer.
But yeah, Jamie, you get to go first this week. There was a few good goals in this one. So what have you got for us as your nomination?
We're running a theme of low-hanging fruit over the last couple of weeks. But yeah, and like there was a lot of good goals in this game. But I have to go the low-hanging fruit and go with Joe Barry's Razzle Dazzle. And for those of you listening or watching, obviously go to the AFL website because it is nominated for Goal of the Week. Put your nominations in for Joe Barry. But
took on the tackle, coughed it up, winds. Berry wants his left. Freo corral him, so in the end goes on the right. It shows he can do it with either foot. What a goal from Berry.
And then just the quick hands from Ollie Wines. Bez then has to make some decisions. Am I going to go left? No. I'm going to handle? No. I might go on my right. Well, why not? Let's have a crack at my right. I'm missing on my left, so I'll put him through on my right. What a great way to do it. And what a pretty special goal.
How can you go past it? He dips, he dives, he dodges. He goes on the right foot, which we've now seen a handful of times this year, which says that he's putting in the work. He's getting up early. He's putting in the work, developing a right foot, and he's kicked a worldie of a goal at the northern end.
He has. It was a beauty, and yeah, as you said, on his non-preferred, it is nominated for Goal of the Week in the Goal of the Year, Goal of the Week for the Goal of the Year nominations to the AFL. So yes, low-hanging fruit, but very, very tasty fruit that it was. I mean, shout out! I meant to just mention before, like in the Wilson Gray honorable mentions. Facetiously, I did text you on the day and the Wilson Gray and say, can I nominate Mason Cox's miss from 2 meters out for Wilson Gray because it gave me warm and fuzzies because I just don't like it,
and his folks were there too. It was so embarrassing.
Which I felt bad about that when I watched the replay, but I was just like, also funny. But speaking of Joe Barry, to bring it back to the point a little bit, his fucking torp assist, by the way, was was in my Wilson Gray shortlist as well. So he had some nice moments, like just unloading the torp on the run. Mm-hmm. Even his set shot in the first quarter, I actually liked the shape. He misses it, of course, but the shape on the kick was really nice. So yeah, just had some nice moments again. But obviously, that goal you've just nominated is very, 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 very tasty, like a tasty.
And where did he kick it, Dave? Where did he kick it? Right in front of me, of us.
Yeah, it was actually it was really, really funny that it was kind of like in that spot where we're kind of like craning our necks.
Bit of tippy toe action, yeah.
Just trying to speak, but we could just see we could just see Joe Barry between heads, just fucking bouncing and dodging, ducking, dipping, diving, and dodging, and then suddenly it's popping through and. I think there's almost a moment of disbelief. Is like, has he actually kicked it? And then, like, as the noise of affirmation hits, it's just like, yes, he has.
You see the umpire come across, just squaring up.
Yeah,
double barrels.
Beautiful. Yeah, and I think between us, I can't remember who said it. I'm pretty sure I turned to you and said that's made me bust. Good shit from Joe Barry.
That's a massive
very, very good. A very, very good pick number 15 that we've got there. Low-hanging fruit that it is, but there was a few good ones on the day. I said to you right from the off when Mitch Sadow kicked the opener from 50, I said, well, that could be one, but it's not going to be my nomination. Yeah. I just think that's an honorable mention there. And
just to cut in, for those who watched on TV, there was no wind. Like, he's just kicked that on the hop from 55 out. Like... The flags were limp when he kicked that goal. Which just adds to the one. Yeah. So I didn't know he could do that.
Yeah, he's just some power in those legs. But my nomination is going to go to Dante Vicentini's little volley on the line past Alex Pearce at the back end of the first quarter, and of course comes from a Jace Burgoyne assist that is also. A volley assist.
So so good.
It's real World Cup fever stuff in the Vicentini one there. But yeah, great stuff from Vicentini, just getting himself to the spot in the line. Alex Pearce kind of trying to kill it over the line, but probably not just expecting Vicentini to just stick with the play. And Vicentini sticks with the play and knocks it through. So that's my nomination, and a very, very beautiful one as it was.
Further forward, but anyway.
You, mate. Hurried kick out of there from Burgoyne. Pearce. Oh, that's a goal!
That's a great goal.
That's a brilliant goal from Vicentini.
There was two kick out of the air, so it was Burgoyne inside, and then this one from Vicentini.
Yeah, I think it's going to be hard pressed against a Joe Berry goal as good as it is. But yeah,
this vote is going to be good. I feel the vote is going to be good because this also falls into like your nomination for last week, and I mentioned like the whole team goal of the week and goal of the year nomination. Like that is another perfect example of a team goal of the year nomination because it's just delicious. So I am really looking forward to the vote on this one.
Yes, no, you're right. Yeah, this one's one of those ones that I think. I mean, we saw 65-35 on the vote last week. I think I'd expect it to be a bit closer this week. It'll be really, really interesting to see what people reward, because it depends how much we've kind of coaxed people into. There's just the like, enjoy Joe Berry. He's not a bust kind of like mindset. But,
yeah, almost Clockwork Orange, like Joe Berry.
But the Dante Vicentini one's very visually appealing as well with the whole package. So it'll be interesting. I guess it'll depend on how I edit it. So maybe I'll just use some creative license. No, I won't do that. Be very, very even on it. All righty. Let's get to our player of the year voting. Now it's time for the CREEDCAST player of the year voting. Alrighty, player of the year voting. And a reminder to you out there that might be new listening to the podcast, and welcome to the chaos that is this podcast. But what we do with our player of the year votes every week is we each vote 5 through 1, 5 being our best on ground, 1 being our 5th best on ground. We don't know who each other have voted for each week, and we take it in turns as to who goes first each week. And this week, I get to go first on my votes. As I said to Jamie off air, I had to work today when I wasn't meant to, so my stats pack isn't as loaded as it usually would be, but I am going first, and I do have my votes very, very locked in. And with my first, I did find it troubling this week because I had a lot of players I wanted to reward, but ultimately, with my one vote for my 5th best on ground, I have gone with Logan Evans, who I have been really, really. I mean, I think you and I have been impressed with him all year, again, a game that he's just really, really important in what he's doing. He still has his moments. He has a couple of kicks where he tries to bite something off and it doesn't quite come off. But I want a young player in a developing side to try those things and keep trying those things, because that's what's going to make him better in the future. He has the 23 disposals, going at 95%, almost 96% disposal efficiency anyway. So it doesn't matter too much. Like most of them are going pretty well. He has 10 marks. He has the 5 intercepts, 364 meters gained. I think he has a 7 rebound 50s as well. He's doing a lot of things with the position he's being tasked to play in. He's doing it very, very well, considering the players who've lost in these kind of positions. He's obviously, and we're missing a lot of players. You think back to a couple of years ago when you've got the likes of Dan Houston and Kane Farrell playing some of this role. He's trying to take the game on in a similar way. He has the 6 bounces in this game. Like, he's trying to take the game on a little bit and actually doing it reasonably well, I think. And considering the downturn he had last year after his burst onto the scene as a mid-season draftee, I think he's really bounced back this year. He's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder. He's got a bit of swagger. I'm really enjoying just the kind of the persona that Logan Evans has gone into this year with, and I think he's getting better because of it as well. So really, really impressed with his game and how he continues to develop. My 2 votes, I've got Aaliyah having an All-Australian season that I really, really, really hope is rewarded with an All-Australian jacket. That remains to be seen based on what happens with the selection committee, of course. But he has the 18 disposals going at 83%. Yeah, of course, his game is always backed up by the fact that he has an incredible 13 marks, 10 intercept possessions. He has a couple 1%ers, of course, as well. Just overall, and just his leadership is what means a lot to me down there. Obviously, we talked about a turnover here or there, but ultimately, I can't even imagine where this defense would have been over the past couple of years without Aliir. I think last year in particular, he was fighting on one leg and really, really battling. But this year, he's still battling and being the general down there, but he's actually leading a young group through to the new era. And I think he's kind of found a new bounce in his step this year as he's watched this group develop around him as well. And it's making his football in the twilight of his career, whatever that twilight length is going to be, look really, really good. So, really, really impressed with what he's doing. And he's been finding his way into our votes a little bit more regularly again, which is a little bit harder sometimes for the defenders to do. But, he's really, really doing some great things for us down there. My 3 votes goes to Jace Burgoyne, who's, again, another player that's starting to pop up a little bit more into our votes again. He has 24 disposals, going at 75%. He has 7 score involvements, 543 meters gained, which is just some great numbers for him as well, considering his midfield time. He obviously has 6 clearances, with 4 of them being from the center and a couple of stoppage clearances in there as well. He has the 5 tackles as well, because a cornerstone of his game is always his pressure there as well. So really, really good stuff. It's 6 marks as well. I'm just looking for his. Sorry, I was misreading, because again, I said my stats pack wasn't as put together as I would have liked it to be. But there's 7 contested possessions as well. But yeah, overall, a really, really impressive game from Jason. He's just starting to turn that corner back into the player that we're probably really, really excited for. Maybe out the back end of the Hawthorn game and into the start of last year. It's been an indifferent maybe 12 months for him, but we're starting to see probably some of the best of Jace Burgoyne again, which really whets the appetite for what's going forward. My 4 votes goes to a player that we've talked about a bit on this podcast, Ollie Wines. Vintage Wines. We love a good Ollie Wines performance. He has, I texted this to you, I think at some point in the evening after the game. I think I sent to you, Ollie Wines TOG, 76%.
Yeah.
And I did say, in the preview, I think we both kind of touched on it possibly, that it was going to be really intriguing to see if he ticked over the 70% mark, because we haven't seen him do that much at all this year. But 76% time on ground is by far the most we've probably seen from Ollie in a long time. And so he took that mantle of having to take a little bit more leadership and time on ground and turned it into a 30 disposal performance with 16 contested possessions, going 63%, doing a lot of hard work. He has the 7 clearances with a good even number of, he has 3 from center, 4 from stoppage. He has the 6 score involvements. His tackle numbers he had the 4 tackles as well. 4 marks. He just had a really nice, well-rounded, good, hard nut Ollie Wines game. Of course, I mentioned before, highlighted just by in between the stats leadership, like putting Brayshaw on his ass, just things like that really mean a lot to a guy like me. My 5 votes goes to Joey Richards, which there's a tinge of sadness in my voice after hearing the injury news today, which maybe just adds a little bit of I already had my votes set before I heard the injury news, but maybe adds a little bit of lore to it, depending on where the broken finger or fractured finger, whatever the injury was that he got. But Joe Richards' legacy game, 31 disposals with 16 contested, 64%. The numbers between on how Ollie and Joe teamed up are very, very in the contested and disposal efficiency numbers and disposals are really, really nice. But yeah, he has the 6 clearances himself, 2 from center, 4 from stoppage, almost 399 meters gained. I can't say on the 8 tackles as well, which I think he had 2 or 3 in the first quarter that got holding the ball calls. Obviously, his goal came from a holding the ball call. Finishes the tackle. He has a couple more holding the ball calls. His pressure numbers are incredible. His disposal numbers are incredible. Contested possession numbers, clearance numbers, everything you want from a guy playing his role. And considering the role, he's only just been thrown into midfield, 6-7 weeks ago. He continues to ascend with every marker he's given by the coaching group and said, okay, we're going to give you this role now. He just continues to ascend and evolve and become a better player. And we've got one in Joe Richards, and he's going to be very, very important for us for the next, 3 to 5 years, whatever the career numbers end up at. And he's only 20, I think it's 27, 28 maybe now, or 26, 27.
26. I think they actually mentioned that in commentary.
Yeah. I was really just having a blank. I was like, I don't think he's that old, but I always forget because of his games played and his mature age recruitment. I'm like, I always get that number mixed up. But yeah, he's still got a fair bit of career to go. And he keeps just accepting the challenge given to him by the coaches and with both hands and going out there and putting in some good performances. Also, before I throw to you for your votes, Sneaky just putting on a little bit of muscle. There's a couple of flexes he did in celebration. I was like, motherfucker's got some thickness in those arms now. And I'm enjoying it. Yeah. Considering when you look at him, pictures of him in his first few games for Port Adelaide, still a little bit of a skinny mini, but he's got a little bit of flex in those biceps that I'm enjoying. And it's probably helping him in doing what he's doing in performances like this.
Love it. I totally agree. Yeah. Great noms. Logan Evans actually ended up as an honourable mention for me, painstakingly, of course, because, we've loved his season. So glad that you got him in to the votes. DBJ, also one of my honourable mentions, another unsung kind of hero game of DBJ, also going over 90% disposal efficiency. Probably a couple more there. I've given Aaliyah the 1 vote. And I was kind of thinking, like, I don't know if we've actually given Aaliyah enough votes over the course of the season. So I was like, I have to get him in. So I've got him pegged at the 1 vote. Yeah, unfortunately, that one key blemish, which I'm happy to forgive due to his overall game and overall season thus far. 2 votes I've given to Mitch Zetto. I just kind of figure that if you've got 6 shots on goal, you're going at 50%, albeit, but if you're getting 6 shots on goal, you're one of the best 5 players on the ground for mine. Filling that shots on goal void, like we mentioned earlier, from Mitch Georgiades' absence. So 10 disposals, 4 of those contested. He used the ball at 70% efficiency, actually gained 264 metres, 3 marks, the 3 goals, 3, obviously, in his 7 score involvements and 10 pressure acts, which I think you might have brought up before as well. So credit to Mitch. I think we've managed to get, the Mitch Zetto some votes recently, Xavier Bammett. So good to know that our alternative recruitment methods are netting some CREEDCAST votes, which I know they look out for. My 3, 4, and 5 is exactly the same as you. Jace Burgoyne at 3, Ollie Wines at 4, Joe Richards at 5 votes. Couple of things from Wines that I think you missed out. 3 score launches in his 6 score involvements, 2 goal assists from Ollie as well, which, I'm a big goal involvements type of guy. That's very important. And out of his 4 tackles, 3 of those were inside 50, which just goes to show what we're on about for the game. Obviously franked in that first half. Joe Richards, 4 tackles inside 50 out of his 8. But Joe Rich, what a fucking tease. Oh, did you mention ground ball gets? Ollie Wines had 16. 16! That's more than 13 goals that Buddy kicked in Tasmania that one time. I emphasize one time like it's insignificant. It's more like, remember that one time, which all of us footy nuffies tend to do when we get around a group of mates, which is like, remember when this niche footballer did that or that superstar did that? And and that's what entertains us. We're simple. We're simple creatures, us men. But 16 ground ball gets Ollie Wines. That just,
man.
We're just normal men. We're just innocent men. Yeah, love it. 4 intercepts as well, Ollie. So yeah, just stuffed it. Stuffed that stat sheet, Ollie Wines. And I mean, you were talking about him before, and for me, I think ever since his Brownlow, whether it be through injury or just the changing of the guard, he's kind of had to take not maybe passenger seat, a back seat, definitely a back seat this year. So I don't know if he's ever really got to enjoy being one of the best players in the comp, because in 2021, he had a phenomenally consistent year and thoroughly deserved that Brownlow. And, you know, we haven't really been able to see that again for those various reasons, like I said. So it's always good to see him turn back the clock like he did the other day. Joe Richards, what a fucking tease. Having his career best game, career best disposals, probably had career best numbers for some other key statistics. He had 9 ground ball gets, Joe Richards. And yeah, we see the injury report being filed today, Tuesday, 21st of July. And he's just another casualty added to our injury list, unfortunately. So I dare say that'll be a JHF for Joe Richards, but it's just like, for fuck's sake, can we just catch a break and enjoy again?
Yeah.
Talking about continuity. Unfortunately, Joe Richards, a bit of an Icarus moment, if you will, like he flew close to the sun, but unfortunately his wings of wax have melted off, and he has to sit on the pine for a month. For fuck's sake!
Yeah.
So. Credit to him. Yeah, quite clearly best on ground. All the flicks, all the claps, all the flowers for Joe Richards. Just had a phenomenal game. Looks like, when he celebrated that goal, I was like, you look like the type of guy that should have just that bit of 2000 stubble and a soul patch. I think actually Jared Schofield, maybe back in the day, might have rocked the soul patch.
Yeah.
That type of deal. A bit of that bit of gel in the hair, a bit of that 2000s mohawk type deal. Yeah, that's Joe Richards for me. That's the vibes I was getting. Just pumped after that goal.
Mash Mouth All-Star video. Lens, Still My Sunshine. I'm trying to think which one I'm thinking of, but
Sugar Ray.
Yeah,
every morning. Yeah.
Every morning. Yeah. No, every morning I wake up and wonder what the fuck
great song.
happened to our injury list. I feel like that medic at the start of Saving Private Ryan, the whole Omaha beach scene, and like the medics are trying to save guys on the beach, and some guy gets fucking just domed, and the medic, and that sounds facetious. I'm like, the medic just fucking throws his helmet and just starts yelling at the machine gun there. It's like, just give us a fucking chance. And I just feel like that would Joe, obviously not comparing war and just a finger injury in football, but just like when the injury list dropped today.
Talking about the movie.
But like, it came out of nowhere. Like, just Joe Richards broke his finger in the game, apparently.
Legit. I saw the notification and I was like, are you fucking... is this serious?
Double take.
Are you fucking kidding me? We just see Joe Richards' career best game, and now this shit. I got a belly full of white dog crap, and then you put this on me.
Planet horse shit. Yeah. No, it's fun. Oh, and like we said, we were talking about. We're going to lose our goddamn minds in this podcast by the end of the season if these injury reports keep hitting. Because,
bring on the AFLW season. I need some fucking I need some joy again and performances.
Knock on wood that the injuries don't start hitting there. Look, let's we're going to close off this podcast before we lose our goddamn minds too much more. This week, of course, the full preview squad show will come on. Will be recorded on Thursday evening and released into your podcast feeds on Friday morning. But we've got Brisbane coming up this week, which just go from Fremantle into Brisbane, like no big deal. Injury crisis keeps deepening, but Brisbane on early Sunday afternoon. Brisbane weather's looking nice. 22 degrees is a max, not much rain around or anything like that. So probably more or less maybe just the Brisbane version of what we got on Saturday, more or less. So conditions reasonably good for footy. I guess, Mitch Georgiades out of protocols, we assume. Jason Horne-Francis back from suspension is probably the main changes. And, of course, Joe Richards goes out. So you kind of already mentioned maybe Richards out, Richards out, Horne-Francis in. Do we think maybe the other one, obviously, Jacob Ware was a late in? Then it's also the Todd Marshall question are probably the two ones I'll throw at you to close out this podcast.
Pretty easy questions to answer. Todd Marshall, unfortunately. Yeah. You make way. When you've got a young Jack Whitlock having 5 shots on goal as the tool, Dante kicking 2 as a backup ruckman, and the tool presence up forward, and you unfortunately finish with 5 disposals. Nuance and all of that put to one side. If you want to play devil's advocate, unfortunately, you lose your spot for mine. Jacob Ware, I think this in and out kind of shit, and being the 24th, 25th best player for Port, like I thought he had a good showdown. From a defensive wing point of view, I tested to that both in our review and then our preview of the game after that. But yeah, he's just like the in and out is kind of getting to him. It's not ideal coming in late 2 games in a row, but just not netting anything that I think commands being retained in the side. So I think he'll be swapped for someone. Just as a little added extra, it'd be harsh to drop Baylor O'Brien. But with JHF coming back in, does that mean Bergman goes back to the defence, or do we continue with him in there with sights on the future? And it would be harsh to drop a debutant. It's always rough. I'm the kind of, give a debutant 2 games before you drop them kind of thing. But it'll be interesting to see, if they go, you were picked because quite a few soldiers down and exposure and Bergman to the middle. But yeah, so for mine, the George for Marshall, the JHF for Richards are pretty easy ones. But yeah, Ware and O'Brien, I've got my sights on. I'm interested to see what they do there.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is, like, Harrison Ram was meant to play last week as well, what they look at with matchups with Brisbane.
Yeah, although Brisbane, I don't know if their tall forward threat is as severe as Fremantle's.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The trio that Freo presented is not quite as much. Brisbane obviously have a couple of weapons up there, but it's still a little bit of a different matchup situation to deal with, and a little bit of horses for courses as well. So it's going to be an interesting one to see how the squad lines up this week, and we'll certainly be all across it on Thursday evening, which we should be in the same timeline again, all going well, because I have no plans to go see the Odyssey again this week. I would, and I actually do have plans to see IMAX in a month or so. But
I'm praying for rain so I can see it during the day. But should be all right for the squad show.
Yeah, absolutely. So look forward to it. Thank you as always for listening. We appreciate you guys, whether you be listening on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Pods, wherever it may be. Give us your subscribes and likes in those areas if you haven't already, and get around the socials, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, wherever your proclivities may be for social interaction. Get around us, and we enjoy the interactions. We certainly enjoyed all the interactions over the weekend, particularly the fact that it was just all pretty much positive, warm and fuzzies, people enjoying the fact that Port Adelaide put a good show on the field. And I think it's really, really a credit to the Port Adelaide fan base. The majority of it, that they do understand the nuance of where we are and appreciate the efforts of a team doing what they can in the current circumstances. So really, really appreciate you all. Thank you for listening as always. Khan the fucking pair.
Khan the pair. Thanks, guys. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you on Friday.